In this gallery, we're telling three different stories. What happens to the fort between World War I and World War II, what's happening with African Americans between World War I and World War II, and what is happening with women between the two wars. Between World War I and World War II, the fort goes back to being a cavalry base. They do build a larger hospital facility at the fort immediately following World War I so that they can treat soldiers coming back from the front, as well as those suffering from what was then called the Spanish flu. The doctors at Fort Des Moines actually invent and receive a patent for a new prosthesis called the Fort Des Moines leg. By and large, however, the fort simply exists as a cavalry base and a field artillery base for the Army. The second story this gallery tells is that of African Americans between the war. Though the story of our black officers is uplifting, we must place it in historical context. When the black officers of Fort Des Moines and black enlisted men return home after serving in Europe, they walk back into one of the worst periods of racial violence in our country's history, known as the Red Summer. Hundreds of African Americans were killed in riots and acts of violence across the country. The 1920s also saw membership in the Ku Klux Klan balloon. Estimates ranged from 3 to 8 million members in this period. In fact, membership ballooned in northern and midwestern states in particular. In 1924, the Klan was so successful at getting members elected into positions of political power that some states like Colorado and Indiana were effectively under Klan control. So despite the advances made by black officers of Fort Des Moines, we must remember that the United States was far from achieving anything like racial equality. The United States was, however, hardly the only nation struggling with race. Nowhere is this more obvious than Nazi Germany. In our next galleries, we tell the story of the women who trained at Fort Des Moines and served in World War II, fighting against the Nazis and imperialist Japan. But we must put their story into historical context as well. At the conclusion of World War I, not only were women not allowed into the military, they had yet to receive the right to vote. Not until 1920 was the 19th Amendment ratified. It is remarkable then that only 22 years later women were serving in the military, though this historical context does give us some insight into the resistance to and discrimination they faced during their service. The stories told in this gallery are important because they help us see the larger historical picture that the men and women of Fort Des Moines fit in. Though we focus on our part of the story at the fort, the men and women who served here had lives and experiences well beyond their months and years of service. When the black officers left the service, they still faced acute, violent racism. When women entered the service, they still existed as part of a society that doubted their ability to handle the challenges of the military. Fort Des Moines helped shape countless men and women into leaders that, as part of a flawed world, did their best to make that world a better place for all of us. So it is the historical context that we're trying to provide in this gallery, trying to put our small story into the greater story that is happening across the country and across the world so that we can remember how big an achievement it is for the men and women who serve here.